Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC Vegas 46 just ended, and this is going to be my post-fight recap for the main event, Giga Chikadze versus Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar wins a crazy decision. A lot of people counted him out in this fight, myself included. I predicted Giga Chikadze by first round TKO. That was my official prediction. I thought Giga Chikadze was just a superior striker. I thought he would find the body of Calvin Kattar early, hurt him, and then finish him with ground and pound TKO. But Calvin Kattar couldn't have made that prediction more off because he went out there and won a brutal fight via decision. And honestly, there was a lot of things that Giga Chikadze showed me in this fight that, I love fights that answer questions. And this is a fight that I feel like answered a lot of questions for me about Giga Chikadze, even in a loss. We'll get to that a little bit later, but let's recap the fight first. First round was looking really promising for Giga Chikadze. He was just lighting up the lead leg of Calvin Kattar. He was switching stances to southpaw and ripping the body kick, landed repeatedly. He was throwing a nasty head kick that Calvin Kattar partially blocked multiple times, but sometimes it kind of got through a little bit. But as the fight started to go on, and from the very jump, even in the first round, Kattar was just pressuring nonstop, just moving forward, eating shots, absorbing damage, just looking to land his own. As the fight goes on, Giga Chikadze misses a head kick, slips to the mat, jumps up, but as he's scrambling to his feet, Calvin Kattar grabs him via body lock from the back mount and takes him right back down, controls him on the ground for the rest of the round. Giga Chikadze unable to get up. Calvin Kattar didn't land really any ground and pound shots. And I believe this was the only takedown of the fight. So, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but Giga Chikadze showed some good takedown defense in this fight. The second round came along, and the pressure really started to wear on Giga Chikadze. And we've seen this in fights before. It's never a good sign when you're just constantly moving backwards. We've seen it in the Justin Gaethje fight. Justin Gaethje has 5-round cardio, but when he's just constantly moving backwards, he started to really wear out in the Khabib fight. And Giga Chikadze was just constantly moving backwards. Now, as the second round went on, Calvin started to just land more and more. And this fight kind of reminded me of the Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier fight, as well as Marvin Vettori versus Paulo Costa. And what I mean by that, Vettori in the Costa fight and Dustin Poirier in the Max Holloway fight, you could see that they had a power advantage. And Calvin Kattar definitely had a power advantage in this fight. He was walking through Giga's shots, and even though Giga was still firing back, I think this fight was still super competitive through all 5 rounds, even though that Giga was clearly getting the worse for wear in the striking. It was all about the power differential. I mean, Calvin Kattar was landing nasty shots, and Giga was having these huge reactions, and he was starting to get unbalanced on his feet and kind of fall all over the place. And when Giga was landing, Kattar was just like, okay, just walking right through. Really, and that's pretty much how rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5 went. I gave the first round to Giga Chikadze. A lot of people would say it was a toss-up, but Giga won on the feet. And even though Kattar had the takedown, he did absolutely nothing with it. So I gave it a 10-9 round to Giga Chikadze in the first round. But 2 through 5 were clearly Calvin Kattar. The strike differential was insane. Kattar was just plodding forward and eating shots, but landing. For every 2 shots Giga landed, it seems like Kattar was landing 5 or 6, and they were much more powerful. They had Giga, kind of stumbling all over the cage. Both guys really absorbed quite a bit of strikes in this fight, but as the fight really wore on, I mean, come the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, Giga Chikadze was just busted up and cut up. I mean, his face looked terrible at the end of the fight. He had some of the worst cuts I've ever seen on an eyebrow. It looked like a V on one of his eyebrows, and it was leaking, I think, from the 3rd round on. And pretty much the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round were really Calvin Kattar walking through the shots of Giga Chikadze, landing hard shots of his own, and really Chikadze just sprinting backwards and trying to use his footwork to stay off the cage. But Calvin Kattar, we've seen his stamina before. We've seen it even in a fight against Max Holloway where Kattar was taking the majority of the damage to the body, to the head. He still has 5-round cardio. And he was just, it had to be so disheartening for Giga Chikadze because he was landing some good shots. He was kicking to the body. He was landing some head kicks. But just the pop was not on him from the first round on. After that first round, really, none of them were really tagging Kattar at all. Kattar never really looked hurt. Even in the first round, I don't know if he looked hurt at all. But all of Kattar's heavy punches that he was landing looked like they really had an effect on Giga Chikadze. And then Kattar, I guess his hands were starting to hurt. It felt like his hands were starting to hurt. He was just moving forward and throwing nonstop standing elbows. Throughout the fight, we've seen Kattar mix it in, which I thought was very, it was a high fight IQ move of Calvin Kattar. He was mixing in the takedowns repeatedly throughout this fight on Giga Chikadze. And Giga Chikadze, a lot of people speculated, how is his takedown defense? How is his ground game? His takedown defense is very good. I know Calvin Kattar is not some elite world-class wrestler that's constantly looking to take people down, but Kattar has some decent wrestling. He mixed it in this fight. He timed them. It's not like Kattar was shooting desperation shots you could see from a mile away. He was landing with the hands and then setting up the shots, and he timed them very well. And Giga Chikadze, really defended all of them except, I think, since that first round takedown where he slipped and then he got up and then Kattar had gotten the back. So I really like Giga Chikadze's takedown defense. And I really believe that even though this fight went 5 rounds, and I believe that Kattar won every round after round 1, pretty much you could really substitute 3 through 5 were pretty much the same. It was just Kattar coming through, eating shots, and landing more powerful and more volume for Kattar. I really thought that he might get the finish in the 4th or 5th. Giga was really beat up, but there's a lot of things that I believe that Giga Chikadze showed in this fight. And I know maybe somebody's going to say, oh, you're biased because you picked Giga Chikadze, but that's not the case. I love fights that answer questions. And within this fight, Giga Chikadze showed that not only is he durable, this is the first time we've really seen him in a crazy war against an elite level fighter. He showed massive heart and durability within this fight. And also, there was a lot of questions about how is Giga Chikadze's stamina. We've seen him fade in other fights against lesser competitions in 3-round fights. How is he going to do against an elite level featherweight in Calvin Kattar in a potential 5-round fight? And my analysis before the fight was that if Giga Chikadze didn't get the early finish, I thought that Calvin Kattar would finish him in the 4th or 5th round. And I really thought it was working its way towards that. I mean, the pressure and just the volume of striking that Kattar was putting on Giga, I said I thought there was no way that he was going to be able to last. But Giga Chikadze shows that he not only has a 5-round gas tank, he's super durable. And even in that 5th round, with the last 15, 20 seconds, there was a massive flurry by Giga Chikadze. And I know he ended up on the ground, and I know we ended up with some, heavy elbows from Calvin Kattar, and people were saying, oh, it was almost a finish. I don't believe Giga would have put himself in that situation had he not known it was the last 10 or 15 seconds, and that's why he went so crazy. But it showed durability from Kattar. Well, obviously we already knew Kattar had durability and stamina, but it showed from Giga and answered a lot of questions about his takedown defense, his stamina, and his durability. But Kattar, a lot of people had questions coming into this fight, myself included. He took a world-class beating from Max Holloway. And I was wondering, is this going to change him as a fighter forever? And I don't know if it did. I mean, it didn't seem like it in this fight. He came out and really put a beating on Giga Chikadze. And, maybe I'm reading too much into the damage changing fighters, but I believe they really do when they take a lot of damage. It just slows them down a bit. They get a little bit chinnier and whatnot. And in this fight, even though he won, I believe this fight is more competitive than a lot of people are going to make it out to be. I still don't like the amount of damage that Calvin Kattar is taking within this fight. He took a lot of hard shots. He was getting ripped to the body. He was getting hit with a lot of counters. I truly believe, and I think the first round proves this, and I'm not hating on Kattar by any means. I'm just giving you my honest assessment of the fight. Fresh Giga Chikadze versus fresh Calvin Kattar. I think Giga's the better kickboxer. I think Kattar has a little bit better hands. But I just don't like the amount of damage that Kattar's taking constantly in every fight. Seems like he has a broken nose. It didn't appear to look like he had broken in this fight, but he took a lot of shots in this fight. And I'm glad at least he took a year off after the Max Holloway fight because he took so many shots in that. But still, as longevity of a career, I just don't like him, being in constant wars like this. No doubt he's going to have to go to the hospital after this fight and get it checked out. Giga Chikadze, without a doubt, has to go to the hospital. I'm assuming they're sending him right to the hospital. But, I mean, both guys took a lot of damage. Giga Chikadze, this is the first time he's really been in one of these wars. But I just wanted to mention that I really don't like the level of damage that Kattar's taking. And even though he's walking through these strikes, I don't think he was really wobbled at all throughout this fight. Chikadze got wobbled multiple times by standing elbows. I still don't like that he's absorbing all this damage because it really adds up over the course of a career. Now, one more thing I want to talk about in this post-fight reaction to the main event. was, I know a lot of people are going to say, I made a video talking about Alexander Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie, and I said the UFC should have waited and seen what happened in Giga Chikadze versus Calvin Kattar. If Giga Chikadze won impressively, I thought he deserved the title shot. And a lot of people are saying, well, look, your opinion was dumb now because, Giga lost. Well, you didn't know that a couple days ago. If Giga Chikadze would have came out and starched Calvin Kattar, which was a real possibility in the first, second round, had an impressive world-class performance, a lot of people would have been clamoring for Giga Chikadze to fight Volkanovski, and a lot of people would have thought that he deserved it more than the Korean Zombie. I love the Korean Zombie. I'm happy that he's getting a title shot, but I still would have preferred, it's easy to look at the fight now and say, oh, well, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, and I'm happy it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But the point was the UFC could have waited 4 days for a fight that's 4 months down the line. I mean, Colby versus Masvidal just got announced for March. This event isn't happening until April 9th. Obviously, even if Giga Chikadze got a stoppage in the 5th round, he still would not be able to compete on that event. So it makes sense now that the Korean Zombie gets the shot. But I'm just saying my opinion was still valid. You can't look at this fight now and say, oh, well, told you so, because we didn't know this a couple days ago. I would just wanted the UFC to wait. And now that we see Giga lost, he took a lot of damage. Even if he would have won, he wouldn't have been able to step in there. I still wanted the UFC to wait because I thought Giga would have been more deserving had he won this fight. Now, one more thing I want to touch on before we end this video, because I really believe that Calvin Kattar looked phenomenal tonight. This was an amazing fight. I think there's a lot of takeaways you can take away from Calvin Kattar in this fight. He looked super durable still. Didn't look like he got super chinny after the Max Holloway loss. It didn't look like he really missed a beat. Didn't look like he slowed down a lot. I think there's a lot of positive things you can say about him. As well as Giga, you can get a good assessment of his skill set. Now that Calvin Kattar's the best fighter that he's fought in the featherweight division. I know there's some talk of Edson Barboza, which I think is right up there with Calvin Kattar as well, even if the rankings don't reflect that. But I wanted to talk about who could they potentially fight next, because Calvin Kattar's kind of in a weird spot here. He had that nasty, beating loss to Max Holloway just a year ago. So I don't know, if Calvin Kattar really puts himself in title contention just yet. But I think a fun matchup for Calvin Kattar would be Josh Emmett next. Josh Emmett's coming off that big win over Dan Ige. There were some people talking about a potential Josh Emmett title shot over the Korean Zombie. I think that was a little bit of a stretch. I thought the Korean Zombie deserved it more than Josh Emmett. But I think that'd be a very fun fight. Josh Emmett is very durable, very well-rounded, has great stamina, has great power, has great skills, good wrestling, very strong in the clinch. And I would love to see it against Calvin Kattar. I would love that matchup. I think that's a great potential matchup for Calvin Kattar. And then as far as Giga Chikadze, I think he's going to be out a while. So it all depends where the division is at by the time that he comes back. But I would love to see Giga Chikadze versus Brian Ortega. I think Brian Ortega is just coming off a loss to Volkanovski. I think Brian Ortega should take a good while off as well. Maybe match these guys up in the wintertime. I think that'd be perfect. I don't know if their schedules and their time frames for when they want their next fights are going to match up, but I think those are two great options for the winner and the loser of these fights. And I would love to see both of them. So overall, UFC Vegas 46, I think the card left a lot to be desired, but the main event absolutely delivered. And even though Chikadze lost, 2 through 5, and on the judges' scorecard, Chikadze lost every round. And, I get that some people might say that first round, well, Kattar controlled him on the ground for half the round. Well, Chikadze beat him up for half the round on the feet. I would have liked to see, another thing I wanted to mention before I end this video, Chikadze, as that pressure and that stamina started to wear from Calvin Kattar as he was on his back foot, he started to get away from the leg kicks and the body kicks. Early, he started heavy with the leg kicks. And I really think that Chikadze, we've seen the holes in his game that he really needs to improve on. He needs to improve on the scrambles off his back when he's on the ground. He showed that in the first round. And he needs to improve maybe the footwork to get out of the way a little bit, but also he needs to improve on his ability to negate the forward pressure, because now everyone has the blueprint. What do you do against Giga Chikadze? You just press him nonstop, keep him on the back foot. Because when Giga Chikadze was moving forward, he looked amazing. I mean, every time that he was moving forward, he was landing at will, even up until the 4th, 5th round. I really think the problem was he didn't have the gas tank to keep pressuring. If Giga Chikadze would have had the gas tank like Calvin Kattar to keep pressing forward in the manner that Calvin Kattar was, I mean, we've seen plenty of fighters that are like this. If they're moving backwards, they can't fight very well. But if they're moving forward, they fight amazing. Khabib Nurmagomedov is one of them. When you get Khabib moving backwards, he fights a lot, a lot worse than he does when he's really moving forward and pressing the action. And I think that's one thing Giga Chikadze clearly needs to work on. But overall, great fight. UFC Vegas 46 main event absolutely delivered. I can't wait for UFC 270. I'll be doing predictions for UFC 270, which is next Saturday, very, very soon. So if you guys enjoyed these videos, make sure to like the video, make sure you subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.